Welcome back to a special edition Rebel's Edge. Today, we're not going to be talking about stocks, although we are going to be talking about money. And this all ties in with sports, folks. So Pete and I are going to break down the new International Basketball League and why it will or will not succeed. We've got all that for you on today's special Rebel's Edge. Bang!
It's a special edition, John.
Special edition.
Indeed.
Welcome, folks. We hope you enjoy it. It is a special edition sports Rebel's Edge. But like we said, we always go for the cash flow, follow the money, and we're going to do exactly that with this new announced International Basketball League. He is Pete Najarian. I'm John Najarian. As Pete says frequently, he had a long career in pro football. I had a very short career in pro football, 4 games. Pete played 6 years in a variety of leagues, not to mention that one of those leagues was exactly a startup like the International Basketball League is a startup. So, Pete, why don't you tell them just a little bit about that? Because it'll tie into the International Basketball League.
Well, I was getting towards the latter part of my career and bouncing around in the NFL and truly bouncing around in the NFL, and ended up getting talked into going to an opportunity to see if I was going to get into the next World League of American Football was the name of them. And essentially they had teams in Canada as well as over in Europe, and then of course the United States, and we would bounce all over the place or whatever, 10 total teams. First year we were predicted to win the whole thing. The second year we actually weren't predicted to, but we did win the whole thing. And it really was some of the most fun football in my life. And you know, it was something that the NFL liked enough that they actually essentially bought it, and it turned into NFL Europe. So that was sort of the beginning and where it went to. And then eventually the NFL, after, you know, a couple of years of doing this, decided to shut it down, and then essentially got right back in with the NFL. But with the NFL then going more and more into South America and Europe and those kinds of places to try to get what they really want, which is a much more of a global feel for the NFL, which I still think it's a smart idea. We see college teams doing it a lot more every single year, going over to places like London and Paris and wherever, and playing football games. So it's all about getting the NFL or sports over across the pond, that are sports that are still kind of second or third, maybe even in some other countries, but they're starting to get their momentum going on that side of it as well, John.
Well, and to the point of this, Pete, there have been multiple attempts at football in particular, just like Pete just described in the World League of American Football. And he's too humble to say it, but he was the #1 pick of the Sacramento Surge for that league. And the big impediment, Pete, is, of course, filling the stadiums so that when you are on TV, you're not showing an empty stadium. That is one of the difficult things to do, especially for football, baseball, soccer. You don't want to show half the stands empty. You want to put all the fans on the one side so people think, oh yeah, I'm part of something special, rather than seeing, you know, that everybody's clustered between the 40s and there's nobody at the 30, 20, 10 goal line and so forth. Certainly nobody in the end zones. And people, you know, there's this fear of missing out in investments or FOMO. And there's also people that want to be involved with some sporting event and being a fan of that event. And if nobody else is there, you're like, oh, do I really care? So there have been, you know, the XFL, for instance, and then we'll get to this International Basketball League, Pete. But the XFL, freaking billionaires bag it immediately. I mean, Vince McMahon's a multi-billion-dollar business, and he's a billionaire, obviously. WWE World Wrestling Entertainment, which was WWF previous and all that. He decided, I'm going to do XFL with NBC. And you think about it and you go, how could it lose? Well, once it lost 35 million apiece or 70 million total, they both said, done. And then a couple of years later, they decide, let's do it again. And bang, it goes down again. And then they have like names like He Hate Me. They did interesting things with the jerseys where they let the players pick their names on the back of their He Hate Me or whatever. And I don't think people are going to fill the stadium for that, Pete.
No.
And then they tried again with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Fox. And that's still going on, that experiment. But all of these are collectively losing hundreds of millions of dollars. Donald Trump owned the New Jersey Generals, Pete, and signed Herschel Walker to a big old contract. I mean, but these billionaires didn't get to be billionaires by being stupid. You know, they cut their losses when the thing's not working, and none of these have worked.
Right.
And, you know, the only thing that I can think of in the relative recent past, Pete, not going all the way back to the 20s, but recently, is that you had the ABA. The American Basketball Association competed against the NBA, National Basketball Association, and eventually the National Basketball Association bought them and brought most of those teams into the NBA. Several, two in particular, didn't make it, St. Louis and I forget which other one, Pete. And the St. Louis guys bought that team for $1 million, betting that the NBA would buy them, and then didn't take any of the buyouts, Pete. And they ended up getting out in 2014. Adam Silver bought them out for $800 million in total because they had a license in perpetuity, which means forever. But anyway, so there have been some successes, Pete, but none of them really survived. It was a question of, can you survive long enough to get bought? So I'll throw this one out to you, Pete, as we introduce it to the listeners, that the International Basketball League, it's going to be kind of like Live Golf. It's a $5 billion venture, they say, and it's basically going to be LeBron James's business partner, who's the CEO of Spring Hill Company. LeBron James is not directly involved, but they've had discussions with him and with Jokic and, you know, a bunch of these guys that are in the NBA. And their investors are going to be, Pete, the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund, PIF, Singapore's Sovereign Wealth Fund, Macau's Galaxy Entertainment, you know, UBS, a bunch of people are allegedly going to put their money on the line for this one, Pete. But I would point out yet again, they got to make money, because if they don't make money, these things end up getting chopped, just like all those things that we just cited, Pete.
Yeah, no doubt about it, John. And it's interesting that they're going in this particular sport. Sort of surprises me a little bit, just because, yes, it's already international. As a matter of fact, there are already leagues that they're going to have to compete with, including the NBA, but obviously leagues outside of the United States. And the structure of the whole thing, John, you know, they found the right chumps that really are willing to throw some money out for a while, and then they're going to get a little tired of it, is my guess. But you're right. I mean, the financing for it, I don't even deny that they might have that $5 billion that they say, but I wonder what that $5 billion is going to be looking like maybe in a year or two. I mean,
it might be drained.
Yeah, I would say that it's going to look a lot like Peloton did, where it looked pretty great when it was $170 stock and we had a pandemic, so everybody had to stay home. It doesn't look so great once the pandemic's over and this thing drops like a stone all the way to single digits. So, and that's pretty much the way I view what this thing looks like right now, John. And we can get into why that is, but you know, all you've got to do is go through what the NBA has done and how they've kind of folded up, I think, ever since Adam Silver basically dang near took over, John, because when you look at what's happened in the NBA, These guys can go 5 steps these days and it's not traveling anymore. You can take that ball and just start running like a fullback down the middle of the court and then put that thing up there, and nobody seems to care, except for the fact that the ratings continue to drop every single year. When Michael Jordan was done and all of a sudden things changed, I think, in the NBA, John, where they allowed for a lot more traveling, a lot less physical play. And I'm not saying you should be, so physical it's a football game out there, but there's got to be some physical part to this whole sport. And they don't allow it. And, it's why when people do these comparisons of today's player versus a guy in even Michael Jordan's era, man, if he's coming down against Detroit, John, going down the middle of the court, he's going to be getting thumped by quite a few guys before he gets up there and does his jam or whatever. So it was a different level, different type of basketball than what they've turned to now. And all you've got to do is say, okay, well, what did the ratings look like back in the early 2000s, the late 1990s, or whatever you want to look at? And it's pathetic. I mean, it's absolutely dropped like a rock. And you can blame a lot of different characters for this whole thing. But that's sort of the backdrop to, well, how are they going to play this basketball? And why is it international? Are they actually tied to anything? The 6 men and the 6 women's teams that are out there? Are they tied to a specific city somewhere? Or are they just kind of going around like a traveling thing like the Harlem Globetrotters? I mean, what the hell is it, right?
Right. And Pete, you named the competition that we already know about, of course, the NBA. And you'd have to basically, as we'll describe, folks, you have to disavow, just like Mission Impossible, you have to disavow the NBA. In other words, you have to give up your contract in the NBA to play in this league where they can't pay you hardly. I mean, yeah, they got $5 billion. How much do they want to bleed is the question there. And Pete, there's also something known as the EuroLeague basketball. And they're not small potatoes. Their viewership was up 27%. You haven't heard us say that about the NBA.
No.
In the entire time Pete and I've been doing the Rebels Edge, which goes back to the pandemic, we've never once said, oh yeah, their ratings are up. No, they're not. They're down every single year. And they're down because physicality, like Pete said. They're also down because people don't like the fact that big players like LeBron and others sit down, and don't play every game. Now, if you're hurt, that's one thing. But, for you to be load managing, as they like to call it, instead of just saying, hey, I'm taking the day off, people don't like that. So in Europe, they've got 1.1 billion viewers that have watched live and delayed broadcasts of the EuroLeague basketball. That's not the NBA, folks. That's the EuroLeague. It's Turkey, Spain, Greece, probably Italy and Israel and so forth. That's a real league, and you're getting real numbers, and they get a lot of, they make money. So it's not like the WNBA, which loses $50 million a year. And that's not us making fun of women's sports. It's just a fact. They do not pay for themselves. The NBA that owns the WNBA loses $50 million a year. So when you're looking at that, and then these guys, Pete, all of a sudden say, you know what? We're going to have a new league, 6 new teams in Europe. That's what LeBron's guy Carter says. 6 new teams in Europe. Okay. 6 men's teams and 6 women's teams. Why are you starting with something as tough as women's teams in Europe? Because you're already going against the EuroLeague. You're already lacking profitability in the United States for women's basketball. Why would you think that Europe would be where you'd really want to carry 6 more cities, whether it's traveling like Pete says, or whether they're fixed in Berlin and London and Paris and so forth? Why would you want to carry that extra weight when you're just starting out? It seems like a wish list of things, Pete, but it doesn't seem like it was very well thought out.
Well, and you and I are numbers guys. We're financial guys, and that's what we're looking at when we look at this thing. What do the financials look like? Well, I can tell you this: 28-year history of the WNBA, they've never had a profit. I'm not saying anything bad about them. I'm not saying I dislike them and any of that. These are just the numbers, right? I mean, these are the factual numbers. Never had a profit. So they had an annual loss of about 10 million in 2023. 2024, it was up to 50 million. So, there's all of this in the league revenue of 200 million. Well, a lot of these things are really interesting, John, and it's not a slap at WNBA. It's not a slap really with the NBA. It's just the facts and the numbers and how it's played out. And I would throw this out there, John. The one good thing that Adam Silver did, and it was probably not even so much that he did it, it was more just that was the offer. But the fact that he signed a media deal, an 11-year deal for $77 billion. That was shrewd. So that's why he's going to keep his job, despite the fact that the ratings every year have come down just a little bit further. Since 2018, John, to the present, their ratings are down 48%. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. And that's 2012. That's not Michael Jordan. That's, years later. So this whole thing is interesting. I find it curious. There's always this want for another league and another something. As a matter of fact, I didn't even ever tell you this one. I was approached early in the year this year to be an owner of a team of a guy who's got his own league that he was going to start. Essentially a USFL wannabe type of a thing, but with a few little tweaks here and there and everything else. But they always do that. But I couldn't put the numbers together to make them work. Every time I looked at them, like, this just doesn't work. It doesn't happen. And you know what? It comes down to the same thing when we're looking at these numbers, John. And then all of a sudden you're saying, well, these guys are going to be traveling. Well, you're going to be chartering all your flights, right? I mean, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, all these things. The expenses are there. Now, when people say revenue, there's a big difference, just so the rest of the world can fully understand this. There's a big difference between revenue and profit. and once you figure that out, that's kind of a big deal, because are you profitable? Can you make money with this? I mean, you can have all these great sales. It's like the 2-for-1 deal at a burger place, right? They're not making as much, and maybe they are making at least a profit. But in this case, you're packaging something up and you got the revenue, but the profit's just not there. And I think that's a big deal. And I love the fact that there's always the entrepreneurial side of this, that everybody wants to do this, but it has to make sense. And from what we have seen so far, at least, and maybe we haven't seen enough, but from what we've seen so far, it doesn't look like something that's going to have a long survival, John, from what we've seen and what we know about the numbers here and even the numbers maybe over in Europe. I just don't see why this is happening. And I'll tell you this, the last thing I'll throw out to you: where do they think all the talent is going to come from to go there? Do they really think guys are going to walk away from a 3-year, $250 million contract or a whatever, these numbers that they get in the NBA, and they're going to go off of something else, a different metric, to be able to get paid when they go over there? I mean, how's that going to work?
Yeah. Well, let me throw out some structure numbers to you guys, and then you can assess for yourselves as well, and Pete and I will discuss. So 6 men's, 6 women's teams, 12 total teams, 8 international cities, including supposedly Macau and Singapore. All right. European venues, we've already said there's some issues there because there's already a league there. Unlike the NBA's city-based franchises, teams are going to travel to these global cities, spending approximately 2 weeks per city. You're not really building a fan base with that. I mean, it's like a rock concert. You come to the city and people are like, oh, what's coming up this weekend? Oh, the men's and women's basketball's coming here. Well, how much is it? Well, players are going to own a chunk of equity. I'm not against that. I know Pete isn't either, but keep in mind, the people that are fronting up the $5 billion, they're not getting as much of a return as the people that, for instance, are in the NBA. they're going to be debuting this in the fall of 2026, just a year from now. Now they say, oh yeah, global reach, there's 2 billion fans. And I question that, as well as, okay, if there really were 2 billion fans worldwide, how many of them are willing to pay $50, $100, whatever it is, so that you can have a competitive salary after, like Pete said, you cover your, you get the revenue, but then do you cover your overhead? And basically, some of these challenges have not been addressed, including the Euro League, including the players' commitment, because again, you're going to have to basically opt out of your contract. I don't see that happening. I see a lot of guys that are cut by the NBA that people don't even recognize their names, going off and playing there. And keep in mind, folks, I live in Puerto Rico. We've got, I think, 6 or 8 pro basketball teams here and pro baseball teams as well. Each city sort of has their own. I mean, Bad Bunny has his own team just down the street, Pete, from me here. But it ain't the same as Major League Baseball, even though a lot of these players go play in the Major League Baseball, you know, like Roberto Clemente, but there are a whole host of others that play in pro basketball, pro baseball, in Europe, pro volleyball from Puerto Rico. But I just think that if there are 125 international players playing basketball already, that's according to the NBA, Pete, 125 players out of the 450 NBA players, 125 of them, call it 25%, are from international cities. Okay, but does that mean that some of those places can pay, you know, $100, $200 a head to go see the game more than once? Or is it like a rock concert, like I say, where, yeah, you can save up and pay $200 to go see the Black Eyed Peas or go see Bad Bunny in some venue somewhere, but it's just not on a regular basis to support that kind of salary structure when the players end up owning a decent chunk of the equity. That's my problem.
Yeah. And, you know, I'll throw one more just stat at you, because we don't make these up. We look them up and we go, oh, okay, I guess that's what the number is. NBA draft, that has dropped double digits in terms of ratings, John. So, you know, just one more thing, because and partially, why is that? Because as good as college basketball is in the United States, and it's fantastic, and it's a great feeder, obviously, into the NBA and the, you know, all the G League and all these types of things. But the reality is, John, how many players are out there that are at the level that people are going to be willing to shell out the money, like what you're talking about, you know, whether it's $100, $200, $300, $500, whatever it might be. And so the names, they don't know, because a lot of these guys are guys that have been playing over in Europe or have been playing over in China or wherever they may have come from, South America, whatever it is. But, you know, they don't have that recognition, right? They don't know who those guys are. And when it comes to college basketball, I would throw out a number like, how many guys are people even aware of that are going into the draft that year that are, you know, college basketball players? Do they really know those names? You know, it's not like football. It's just not. For whatever reason, it's not the same. And it is what it is, but they don't know those names as well. They'll know the first guy, right? Kid from Duke this past year. They're going to know a few names, but not know all the names. And that is something that, you know, over time, are they good enough? Is there enough to feed into the NBA even, let alone to feed into this new league? And there's only 6 teams, so, you know, it's not that many players, but you're not going to be getting the cream of the crop either. And
No.
even with whatever deals you're going to give them, they're not going to take that, because the NBA has that much money. And like I said, credit Adam Silver for one thing. He got that deal done, which is why he's probably not going to get fired. But he did get that deal, and it's a great deal for the NBA, not so much for the media.
Well, and lastly, I'll again just throw out that Euro League, which is growing by leaps and bounds. The Basketball Champions League, the BCL, the Indian National Basketball League, the INBL, that literally is the country of India, for young Indian players. You're competing against established teams with followings already. And my question is, how much bleeding are these sovereign wealth funds and UBS or whomever willing to take, Pete, before they do what other smart billionaires, from Donald Trump to Vince McMahon to NBC to Fox to Dwayne Johnson, before they say, no mas, no mas, I can't take it anymore. I got to cut this bleeding, because it might be a great idea on paper, but as soon as you start putting a pen to paper like Pete just did, I don't know if the numbers make sense. So that's why we figured, why not talk about this on the Rebel's Edge? Because it's the combination of two of the things we love: sports on the one hand and money on the other. It's all about the cash flow, baby. All right, great folks. Stuff. Well, Pete and I do the Rebel's Edge with fantastic futures, macro minutes, stocks, and a little bit of sports every Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern time.
Through Thursday.
So make sure you tune in and join us next Monday, right, Pete?
Monday.
Monday. And what time was that again?
1 p.m. Eastern. Giddy up.
Bang.